Hello and welcome to another episode of Lead with Curiosity with myself, Anthony Donovan. Today I'm joined by Michael McCalmont, who is the founder of Bloxham Mill, based just outside Banbury in Oxfordshire. And I'm looking forward to learning more about Michael's perceptions on serviced offices, the misconceptions, and also his views on leadership. I hope you enjoy the episode. Michael, it's an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest on Lead with Curiosity. Thank you so much for your time. For the benefit of those listening that don't know about Bloxham Mill, can I start by asking you to tell me a little bit about Bloxham Mill?
Okay, so I founded Bloxham Mill in 2000. I was in the property sector for a long time, and it always occurred to me for a long time that there was not the property owners and property occupiers were not properly aligned. There was this landlord-tenant relationship, which was sort of antagonistic, almost sort of deferential, and it should be a symbiotic relationship. And I thought, particularly before that time, that serviced offices were badly organised, badly arranged. And so I wanted to set up something that was a little different. And mainly, the location was important, the environment, also the IT, and really looking after the people that were occupying the offices and treating them as clients. So we, myself and a partner at the time, found a redundant carpet mill, which was in Bloxham, and it was called Steele's Carpet. It was just becoming redundant. So as soon as it was empty on the 1st of July, I think we took possession of it, and then we spent the first 2 years converting 1/3 of it into, in inverted commas, serviced offices. But I don't like the term serviced offices because it has a mix, as I think you've said before, a mixed reputation.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to explore that a bit more later with you as well.
Right. And so we converted and then opened the first phases in 2002, then converted the rest in the next 2 years and opened the rest of it in 2004. So it's been going since then as a highly serviced organisation to really help clients. So we try and get very close to the people who are occupying the buildings, properties.
So started in 2000. So as we're recording, 26 years. Many businesses struggle to stay relevant beyond a decade. You've done that times two. How have you achieved that here at Bloxham Mill, would you say?
Well, it took a long time to build up, probably 5 or 6 years before it started to get into a reasonable profit. And then we were hit by the 2008, which was a big problem for us. With the banks were extremely difficult. And I read a book by somebody called Charles Handy called The Empty Raincoat, and a big part of that is about something called the sigmoid curve, which explains that businesses start on quite a high point, they then go down and then they rise over a period, but they reach a peak at some stage, and you've got to recognize when you're sort of reaching that peak, because at that stage you've got to change, you've got to reinvent yourself. And we, because of all the delays, because of 2008 and so on, we reached that in about 2016, and I didn't really recognize it until about 2018, and then we really set about reinventing ourselves, and because every particular product like this gets tired and the market changes. And so we did a lot of research, and from 2018 and then going forward into the pandemic, we decided in 2018 that we were going to do significant change of management, change the property, how it was all laid out, change of the concept, which we really started to implement that in early 2020, which is, of course, was when the pandemic hit. But that was quite as it happens, it was very difficult time for us, but we would have probably had to close the building anyway. And we found some builders that were prepared to work through the pandemic, so we did the work.
Well, this is what I wanted to ask you about, because as a client here at Bloxham Mill, I saw firsthand that obviously when the pandemic came, everybody's putting the shutters down. And then, as you say, the builders come in and you undertake this incredible sort of renovation. You've created this open space called the Hive, which we can talk about a bit later. And when we were chatting before, you used a phrase that really struck with me. You talked about high risk, high reward. I wonder if you could tell me a bit more about what you meant by that.
I think anybody taking on a new business, which I was doing in 2000, takes incredible risks. I've taken huge risks in my life, and none of them, by all means, have all of them worked. There have been some disasters and some marginal successes. So life is all about risk. If you want a 9-to-5 job, that's relatively secure. That's one thing. If you want to start a business on your own, that is high risk by definition, and you have to you have to start something that is different to what other people are doing, because otherwise everybody will be doing it. So, as I say, that by definition is a high risk. And you hope the rewards are high. Bloxham Mill has been a long journey, but it's a very interesting one, and we've got many more years ahead of us to get where we want to get to. But we changed dramatically in the sort of renovation, going from 2020 to 2022, 23, 24. And it was, in a way, as I say, it was a very difficult time for us, but it was fortuitous because we were able then to adapt our plans to take account of the change in working practices, which were significant, working from home and all of that. And we were able to adapt to take account of those changes.
I think you're doing yourself and the team here a slight disservice, because, as we all know now, hybrid working from home is quite a normal thing. My personal view is that was going to happen anyway, that the pandemic accelerated that. Yes, but you invested a lot in creating a space for that before it actually happened. So I guess that comes back to the high risk, high reward. Talk me through, when you're making bold decisions like that, are there any kind of questions that go through your mind before you make a decision? Or is it just, as you say, life is all about risk, let's go for it? And
it's a mixture of everything, really. You think about it. It sounds rather presumptuous, but you think you have a sort of a vision. You think you have a sort of an idea. You think you have a sort of a concept. I've never been. I should always in my life have done market research. I'm not good at that, and so the risks are higher. But you think you have a concept, and once you have that in your mind, you have to stick to it. I mean, you have tweaks along the way, but you say, right, now that's what I want to achieve. It might take a year or two to achieve that actual concept, but you have to stick to it, and it requires quite a lot of determination and challenges along the way. Yeah, I mean, that's...
So really, what I'm getting from that is there's clarity of what you want to achieve, commit to it, stick to it, but be prepared to tweak and adapt as you go along. Would that be a fair assumption?
We'll come on to leadership in a minute, but leadership is all about decision making. You have to make decisions. You can't procrastinate. And even a not very good decision is better than no decision at all. You just have to go on and make the decision, but you also have to have the courage to change it if necessary. Certainly tweak it. You might have to change it radically, and we've had lots of radical changes, and we'll continue to do so. We're doing lots of sort of affiliated facilities at Bloxham Mill at the moment, and we're trying to think, okay, so what are we doing? How are we going to do it? And I've no doubt we'll make a few mistakes. But it's all about having a good team and discussing it with them and listening to everybody and reaching a conclusion and then going for it, and then, as I say, tweaking it or changing it as necessary.
And you mentioned team there. I agree. I know you're still on site at least 2 days a week, so you're very proactive there. But I know you do trust the team to make decisions and run that for you.
Yes, it was interesting. And the change that I said we implemented in 2018, one was a complete change to the management team. The existing manager was reaching retirement, and we needed a younger approach. And in the interview, it was a very interesting interview process. Again, we made a few mistakes in the appointments. We certainly had one that didn't work. And then in the last, when we were finally making our final decision, one of the applicants was background was hotel, and she'd done worked throughout her life in hotels and done a degree in hospitality. And I thought, now that's really interesting. Because what we are trying to do here, and what property owners have to wake up to, is the fact that they are in the hospitality business. As I say, we treat our occupiers as clients, and in order to look after clients, you have to know a bit about hospitality. And as you know, Emma McGregor, who now runs it, was the applicant that had this background, and I thought that's really interesting. Let's explore that, because it was quite different to what we had considered before. And then I think she had 3 interviews, or 4. Anyway, multiple interviews, and I thought, and this looked to be a very interesting direction. So we appointed her in September 2020. I think she joined us for September, and has been a great success because she understands hospitality. She understands how to look after people, as you have to if you're running a hotel, and she has put together a great team. We now have the best team we've ever had at Bloxham, all immensely invested in the project. They all understand it, and they're all, they tell me they enjoy it. And
well, if I may be bold enough to say, I think appointing Emma and the subsequent team was definitely one of your better decisions.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
And I'm sure you'd stand by that.
I'm very lucky with the team, but it's all about the team.
Yeah.
And now we can do and I think a business, particularly a new business, is about the concept itself, the implementation of the concept, which is funding and everything else, but above all, the people. You can have the best concept in the world, but if you haven't got the team to implement it, you can't go anywhere. And that's what I really truly believe we've got now, and it's very exciting, and that's why I'm still doing it at my great age.
Still enjoying it. Something you said earlier really struck me, and you're very clear about this. You don't like the phrase serviced office, and I think it's fair to say that serviced offices have a mixed perception in the market, should we say. What is it about the phrase serviced office that you don't like, and what would you say are some of the misconceptions about serviced offices?
Well, it's very interesting, really, because when I started, one of the reasons that I thought there was an opportunity in inverted commas serviced offices is that they had a stigma. The only people that went to serviced offices or the only businesses that went to serviced offices were those that didn't have a strong enough covenant to take longer leases, and so they were sort of thought of as small businesses putting their toe in the water. And I thought that's not right, actually, because the alternative is a commitment to a lease, and I have set about trying to turn that around, and we're still trying to turn it around at Bloxham. I think with success now at last, turning it around so that it's not a stigma. It's actually, if you have an office at Bloxham Mill, we're hoping that it adds credibility to your business, and people say, well, if they're Bloxham Mill, they must be an okay business. So the big change for us came from WeWork. Now, WeWork was a largely flawed concept for the simple reason they didn't own their properties, and it's a very difficult thing to do if you don't own your property, because you can't. For one thing, you're letting short-term and paying long-term rent, so that's financially very precarious. But they made people realise that, they made office occupiers realise that what's the point in taking on a 5, 10, 15-year lease? The commitment is huge, and the aspects of running property and pay all the bills, all the management, everything to do with property is very management heavy and very costly. And so the whole idea of having a relatively flexible lease with one invoice at the end of every month is something which WeWork exploited and has indeed caught on. And I think short-term offices of the type that we have will become mainstream. I think and more people moving away from long-term commitments to fully repairing and insuring leases, and rightly so.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if anybody was considering investing or leasing a serviced office, not just here at Bloxham Mill, wherever, what sort of things would you ask them to consider before making that decision?
Well, if you turn it around and say if they were considering taking a commitment to a longer lease, I would say don't, because the commitment is enormous, and until you've come to the end of your lease and have a schedule of dilapidations and realised everything that you've had to do to keep that building in good shape, it's huge. From the air conditioning, from the hardwire tests, they're endless. The cost of running. I mean, I can only speak from Bloxham Mill because I'm not involved with any other one, obviously. But the costs involved and the hidden costs are huge. Not only in straight financial terms, but also in management terms. It takes an enormous amount of time, and the way that it makes it cost effective for us is critical mass. I mean, the fact that we've got 75 offices here, and a lot of people working here, makes it much easier in terms of spreading the costs of all of these. But it's still, nevertheless, it's a tight margin business.
Right. So really, what you're saying then is rather than invest in a long-term lease, you have the flexibility of working from a short-term basis. And
yes, you have flexibility in you can expand or you can contract. You can, and who knows what's going to happen in the next year or two, right, let alone 5 years and even 10 years. It's an enormous burden to take on.
Yeah, I completely agree. One thing I am also interested in, and something I've personally benefited from here, I must confess, is the sense of community. How do you kind of balance? Because as you said, there's hidden costs. You've got to make the books work, etc. But I know you put a big emphasis on community. Talk us through that.
Yes, part of the reason I started this was that serviced offices that I'd seen had no sense of community. They didn't get their clients together, and they didn't encourage clients to feed off each other. It's absolutely pivotal to what we do. If we didn't, we've tried it from the start. We've tried to encourage community, and it's not an easy thing to create. It's not easy to get people to work together, but we're getting there. It's taking a long time. It didn't really work very well in the first sort of 10 or 15 years. We're much more community aware now. So we arrange Christmas parties, we arrange drinks parties, we arrange talks. We try and get everybody together because there's so much that can be. There's so much synergy between all these businesses, and they do now begin to sort of feed off each other, and that's enormously important. So it's very important commercially. I mean, it's money that we have to put behind it, but it nevertheless pays off because.
And I think it's fair to say there's a lot of business done with between businesses.
Yes,
I mean, the
that's what
fact
we've
that
been
we're
trying to-
recording this in a studio in Bloxham Mill is a perfect example. I'd say also that from a client's perspective, the physical space, so the open hive area that I alluded to earlier. So for those that haven't been to Bloxham Mill, as you come in, there's a big open air reception, and there's a hive area where people can come and work either in an individual desk or in a kind of an open area, and you can rent the desk by a day, by a week, by a month. Just that space, I think, naturally brings people together and gravitates.
Yes, Anthony, that's what we changed. We had a set of plans, sort of 2019 going into 2020. That's what radically changed in the first 6 months of 2020, and actually, because Emma didn't join us until, as I said, until September, we kept changing that because, as you rightly say, working from home was coming anyway, and this accelerated it. But very few businesses had really addressed the issues of working from home, and working from home is lonely and isolating, and that's where community comes in. That's why we have such emphasis on community, and so you can come in and take a desk for a day or a month or a week or a year or whatever in the area you're talking about, and they're seeing each other, and the water cooler chat can take place, which it doesn't if they're sitting at home all day.
Yeah, 100% agree. Just as we approach the end of our conversation, you mentioned leadership earlier, and you've got so much lived experience as well. So it'd be remiss of me not to ask you about that. What are your perceptions of leadership? What is it about leadership that fascinates you?
Well, it's a very interesting subject, and you can argue that you're either born a leader or you're not. I think you can acquire a certain amount of leadership skills, and I suppose from my own point of view, the most important thing is to have a team you can lead. The sort of microcosm of a leadership is the army and the regiments and all of that, and they drill their teams, of course, so that they follow their commanding officer. In terms of in the civilian life, you try and put together a team that you can work with, and then probably the single most important thing is decision making. You have to be very concise and very focused and very driven in what you do, and earn respect. Have to earn the respect from the team you're leading, and you have to respect your team. And it's a very rewarding relationship, but you have to be prepared to, going back to risk, you have to be prepared to stick your neck out and say, right, we're going to go for this and we're going to do it. We may change along the way, but at the end of there's the target, maybe 3 or 4 years ahead. That's where we're going to get to. How we're going to get there, we'll work out along the way. But this is the general journey. This is the general journey that we're going to be going on. But it's very interesting. Leadership is obviously very topical at the moment.
100%.
And when one sees people who are clearly not leaders, because they're not prepared to take the flak when you have to make very hard decisions, and it may involve it does involve people's lives, and involves your employees' lives, and you've got to be very sensitive to that. And I think you've got to work very closely with the team in the sense that you've got to be aware of their requirements. You have to think, if they've got families, and how does that work? And there's no doubt that in a well-structured team, there's a lot of give and take, and everybody trusts each other, and it's not clock watching stuff. If people have children with that they have to break off for, then you have to make allowances for that, and that's really important. And that engenders a great sense of teamwork and trust.
You've talked about leadership and team and trust. I'm just curious. You are an inspiration. You come in with so much energy. I know you don't live locally. Every Monday, every Thursday, you're here. I try and beat you in. One day I'll beat you in.
I'm sure you do, Anthony.
There's never a hair out of place. What keeps that fire burning? Why the energy to do what you do?
Because I'm really enjoying this. It's a long journey, and will, I hope, go on years after I've gone. But we're doing something different. We're doing something that is not I think very few others are doing, it's a long, slow process, but you just have to keep at it. And if you enjoy going, and we've had reviews lately with the team, and each and every one of them have said that they enjoy coming in here in the morning. And I do the same, and it's after years of walking up that ramp with
it's a well-trodden path
with butterflies in my stomach. I mean, for years when we first started here, it was very hairy and got really hairy in 2008. And I said to myself then, if ever this becomes less frightening, I'm going to really enjoy it, really keep it. And the challenges, I love the challenges. As I say, it's very rewarding.
Amazing. Well, that brings us to my final question, the question we ask all of our guests on the pod. As you know, the pod is called Lead with Curiosity. So, Michael, what are you curious about learning next?
I learn every day, even my great age. I think curiosity is an amazing asset. You have to be curious. I'm curious all the time, and it annoys everybody immensely. And I'm always asking questions. Now, why is that so? Why do we do that? Now, are we sure that's right? I'm curious as to what makes people tick. What is it that we can do? What is it that we can do better? And what I think is really exciting now, which I know all of your clients will say, is AI. Mm-hmm. And what we can do with AI, and how, and as far as I'm concerned, it will enhance people's work. It will make them more effective. Certainly in this business, I can't see us reducing any employment as a result, but I can see the quality of employment of the work they do improving and being more interesting, because AI will take the grunt out of it.
Absolutely. That feels like a really good place to end our conversation. Okay. Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me, and I look forward to continue to see what happens next.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
I mentioned in the introduction that I was really looking forward to that conversation with Michael, and for me, he didn't disappoint. He's a gentleman that really inspires me. You can hear in his voice just the energy he has. He's always curious. He's always looking to learn. And I think there's a lot to learn from him about his perceptions on leadership and serviced offices as well. So I really hope you enjoyed the content. Thank you for all of you who have hit the follow button. There are several episodes in the back catalogue. So if you've enjoyed this content today, do please hit that button. And of course, most importantly, thank you to you for listening and for your ongoing support.